Greetings from Christchurch, New Zealand. We come to the end of Story of a Soul. In these last few pages of Manuscript C, we see St. Therese's mature thought. She is exhausted, moved from pen to pencil and from her cell to the infirmary. She has to stop in mid-sentence, unable to continue. But what treasure she leaves us in these final written words of hers. As we begin these assigned pages, Therese recounts to Mother Gonzague that she wouldn't have been capable of giving her novitiate sisters counsels had her prioress not entrusted her with this task. Often, God calls forth our gifts through the things other people, even frail people, ask us. Her sisters have benefited from these gifts, and so have her missionary brothers, in her letters, but mainly through her prayers. And not only the brothers themselves, but all who would come to God through their sufferings and preaching. Though Therese herself says she doesn't believe herself capable of instructing missionaries, in God's providential design, she has ended up patroness of the missions. Therese then becomes aware that there is more she needs to explain about the passage she has referred to earlier in this manuscript, as she thinks it little understood. Draw me, we shall run, from the Canticle of Canticles. In her mind, she has seen a connection between these words and Jesus' assertion that no one can come after him unless the Father draws them. Moving nimbly from gospel passage to gospel passage, Therese does some exegesis and reasons that the Father is generous and will grant us everything we ask in Jesus' name, and that the Father will indeed draw us. Her mind then goes to the meaning of being drawn, and she uses the analogy of iron and fire. Therese is a great teacher, and like St. Teresa, readily finds images to explain her spiritual insights. She sees being drawn as a being united with the captivating object, becoming one with it. This is her prayer, asking Jesus to draw her so close into his burning love that he lives and acts in her. This is not some selfish request. Therese knows that the closer she is to Jesus' burning love, the closer to that love will be all others who approach her. She acknowledges that withdrawn from this divine furnace, she is useless. There is a magnificent radiance to prayer. When drawn so as to be united with the object of her desire, then she will radiate out to others, near and far. The closer we are to Jesus, the more grace flows through us. Therese moves to the Martha Mary passage so loved by St. Teresa, and with our Holy Mother's respect for both these women, manages to get the primacy of prayer right. We need to both give ourselves totally to God and go out to others in service, but God comes first. I recall a friend of my mother's, when she heard I was about to enter Carmel, thought I should join a teaching or nursing congregation, so at least I would be doing something useful. Even in Carmel, we do useful things, serving our sisters in various ways, but it is prayer that we are here for. In our very functionalistic world, we too can get caught up in the mindset of doing things, but our relationship with God must take first place. Therese continues her train of thought and lines up the great friends of God and how it was in prayer that they drew out what she describes as this divine science which delights the greatest geniuses. Perhaps as she wrote this, she recalled her early fascination with science and recalls Archimedes saying, "Give me a lever and a fulcrum, and I will lift the world." In her originality, she relates the image to the Almighty alone as the fulcrum, and prayer as the lever, which burns with the fire of love. This echoes the image of the elevator from Therese's other writings. Her thoughts span past, present and future, and how it was, is, and will always be prayer, burning with a fire of love, embracing and embraced by God Almighty, that will move and lift the world of men and women. Therese now homes in on what she sees the canticle meaning when it speaks of the odour of the ointments of the beloved, in which we shall run. Jesus has returned to heaven, but left such luminous traces of his life in the Gospels. Just a glance at them immediately allows Therese to breathe in great draughts of perfume. We have seen in these few passages and throughout Story of a Soul how imbued Therese is with Scripture and their traces of Jesus. Each word draws Therese on to another association, and running reminds her she wants the last place, that of the publican, with his humility and confidence. Again, she thinks of Mary Magdalene, this time of her love and audacity. Therese knows that even were she to have committed all sins possible, she would still, sorrowful, throw herself into the arms of Jesus. I'm reminded of her as a child, waiting solemnly for her father to come home, so she could confess to him the tearing of the wallpaper, knowing that she would be forgiven the more readily for owning up. Now we come to the last and perhaps loveliest sentence, especially for those of us less innocent than Therese. She knows full well that God has preserved her soul from mortal sin through no merit of her own, and she is grateful for this anticipating mercy. Here Therese alludes to this prevenient grace granted to her. She spelled it out in Manuscript A when she referred to the Father removing a stone in his child's way. So too, God in his tender foresight forgave her in advance and prevented her from falling. But it isn't her innocence that sends her to him with confidence and love. She has a much broader message and broader reach to all of us, however sinful, who, if we go to God with confidence and love, are assured of his mercy. Therese's references to confidence and love occur in many places in her writings. Pope Francis quoted this phrase as the title and opening words of his apostolic exhortation for the 150th anniversary of Therese's birth. In a letter she had written the year before her death, she stated, "It is confidence, and nothing but confidence, that must lead us to love." Now, we can sometimes look at the graces others have been given, especially such a stupendous grace as Therese received, and feel like our own lives look rather shoddy beside theirs. We humans have a tendency to compare ourselves with others and think they have it better than us. But God looks at each of us uniquely and gives us the unique graces he has in store for us to become the men and women he wants us to be. None of us will miss out on what is needed, and we can confidently throw ourselves into the arms of Jesus. As Therese drops her pencil, she has less than 3 months to live. Without knowing the context of the writing of these words, one would never guess how sick the writer was. She seems to be full of vigour, and spiritually she is. We hope and pray that we too, when we come to that stage of our own journey, will throw ourselves into Jesus' arms, full of confidence and love.